Okay, so what if I told you there was an ancient instruction manual written way back in the 4th century that laid out step by step how to cultivate what we would probably call superpowers? Well, today we're diving deep into the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. It's this massive, incredible text that's basically a workout plan for your mind, all geared towards one specific goal: developing truly extraordinary abilities.
So, when you read these ancient texts and they talk about things like walking through walls or hearing sounds from miles away, is that all just poetry, a metaphor, or are we talking about a literal training guide? Well, according to this text, it is absolutely not a metaphor. It's a method, a very specific one.
All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at a fundamental choice that every practitioner has to make right at the beginning. Then, we'll get into the yana. Think of it as the mental launchpad for all these powers. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the 12 specific mental tools for this training, and we'll see exactly how they're meant to unlock these abilities. We'll also unpack a really crucial difference between practitioners before finally asking the biggest question of all: what is the real point of doing any of this? So let's imagine you've done the work. You've trained your mind, and it's stable, it's focused, it's powerful. What now? Well, the text says you immediately arrive at this critical fork in the road.
And the choice is between two paths: the worldly path and the transcendent path. You can think of it like this: the transcendent path is about exiting the game of life entirely, just graduating. But the worldly path, that's about becoming a master of the game. It's about developing incredible skills and abilities within it. And for our purposes today, you bet we're going to explore how to become masters of the game.
All right, let's talk about the foundation. Because these powers aren't some kind of magic trick you just learn. According to the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, they are the natural, predictable result of achieving a very specific and very powerful state of mind.
And that state is called dhyana. Now, a simple translation might be quiet contemplation, but honestly, that doesn't even come close. This isn't just about focusing hard on your work. Think of it more like upgrading your mind's entire operating system, making it unbelievably stable, fast, and powerful. And the text is crystal clear. Without mastering dhyana, none of this other stuff is even possible. It's the absolute prerequisite. And here's a really crucial shift in how to think about this. The text doesn't treat these powers as the goal you're chasing. Instead, they're described as a natural byproduct, an after effect of mastering dhyana. It's kind of like becoming a world-class gymnast. Being able to do incredible flips is possible because of all the intense conditioning and strength training. You don't just train for the flip, you train for the fundamental strength, and the flip becomes the result.
So you've got this supercharged dhyana mind. How do you actually use it to do things? Well, the text provides what it basically calls a mental toolkit, a set of 12 highly specific visualizations that act like the software programs for these new abilities.
And here they are. This is the core curriculum. Now I know, that's a lot to take in at once, but notice the pattern here. The training starts with your perception of your own body, things like lightness and softness. Then it moves on to training your senses, like memory and sound, before it expands to much more abstract concepts. These are the specific mental drills a practitioner would run day in and day out.
Let's just grab the very first one: lightness visualization. The whole goal here is to use your powerfully concentrated mind to build deep, unshakable conviction, what the text calls a decisive understanding, that your body is inherently light. You are literally rewriting your brain's basic code for how it perceives your own physical form.
And what's so cool is that the text doesn't just say, hey, feel light. It gives you these beautiful, specific, poetic images to work with. The practitioner is told to cultivate a feeling that their body is like Copic cotton or a wheel of wind. It's all about systematically replacing that default feeling of heavy, solid flesh with this new, cultivated perception of effortless buoyancy.
Okay, so we have the stable mind of dhyana, and we have the 12 mental tools. Now we get to the payoff. How do these practices translate directly into those 5 famous supernormal powers? Well, the text draws a crystal clear map from practice to result.
And here it is. This is the blueprint. It's a direct cause and effect map. So for example, if you want to develop miraculous transformation, you focus on mastering the first 5 visualizations. You want to remember past lives? You master the memory of past actions visualization. For clairaudience, that heavenly ear, you work with sounds of various assemblies. It's an incredibly precise, systematic approach, no guesswork.
Let's zoom in on the most famous one: miraculous transformation. It's not just a single skill. You can think of it as a stack of skills built on top of each other. First, you master lightness and softness to fundamentally change how you perceive your body's density. Next, if you want to pass through a wall, you layer on the empty space visualization, seeing the wall as porous. Then you use mental physical concordance to make your body actually follow your mind's will. And finally, decisive understanding is the master key. It lets you impose a new reality. You perceive water as solid ground, and so you can walk on it.
But here's where the text adds this really fascinating twist. It suggests that not all supernormal powers are created equal. Just because someone can manifest these kinds of phenomena doesn't necessarily mean they're the real deal.
It all comes down to the difference between a sage and a non-sage. The sage's abilities are described as real, tangible. If a sage manifests an apple, you can actually pick it up and eat it. In contrast, the powers of someone who lacks that deeper wisdom are described as being like a mirage. They can create the image of an apple, but it has no substance. You can see it, but it can't nourish you. It's basically a hologram.
And all of this leads us to our final, and maybe most important section. If gaining all these incredible world-bending powers isn't the ultimate destination, then what is? Why would anyone go through all of this intense training? Well, remember that toolkit of 12 visualizations? It turns out that the final few, liberation, overcoming, and totality, they aren't for developing these 5 powers at all. Their purpose is completely different. It's to cultivate what the text calls supreme holy virtues. And this tells us everything. The powers are just a milestone, not the finish line. So what are these higher virtues? Well, they're not flashy powers. They're deep states of wisdom. Things like non-contentiousness, which is a state of profound inner peace and freedom from conflict, or the 4 unhindered knowledges, which is basically becoming a master communicator and teacher of these profound ideas. The text makes it pretty clear that these wisdom-based skills, these are the true prize of the entire path. And this quote from the text, man, it really puts the whole thing into perspective. The practitioner is taught to see their own ordinary, uncontrolled thoughts as a sickness, like boils, like arrows, as the actual source of all suffering. So the real goal isn't just to get better at thinking, it's to ultimately transcend thought itself and reach a state of sublime, serene peace.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on, doesn't it? This ancient text lays out a path where incredible mental powers are really just signposts on a much longer journey. It forces us to ask ourselves, if you could train your mind to its absolute peak, what would you even use that power for? And if the true goal isn't control, but wisdom, what does that wisdom ultimately ask of you?